Rev up your engines! Kilmer says, what car brands do you think is bad? Okay, well, you mean are bad, because there's more than one. If you said brand, it would be as bad. I'm an educated man. I was writing my PhD at one point in time. So, anyways, my wife's a teacher, so she was a teacher. She's retired now. The Fiats are crap. Volkswagens in the United States, plastic junk that falls apart as it ages. That's why you can look at used Volkswagens. They go for nothing because they have such a bad reputation, and deservedly so. I'm not a fan of any of the Chrysler products, practically. You know, they make mistakes. Jaguars are horrendous cars. I mean, there's a lot of bad cars out there. You better ask which are the good ones. It's a much shorter list than the bad ones. Well, he says, Scotty, what's a good year Prius to buy? Okay, Priuses are all pretty well made. I go more by the mileage. You get over 200,000 miles, they're real expensive. Their batteries cost a ton. Repair them is complex and expensive. You go more by the mileage on the Prius. I would have no qualms about buying one that's 12 years old. If it only had 50 or 80,000 miles, it's still going to go quite some time. They didn't have any particular problems with any year at all, anything big that really means anything. I've had people buy them, drive them 200,000. Then when they start to have problems, they go buy another one. And if they get 200 out of each car, they're happy. There's nothing wrong with that. It's more the mileage on the car than the actual age, because they didn't have any particular flaws in any particular year. Minor things here and there, but the engines and trannies, they sold millions of those things. Jerome says, I need an EV, an electric vehicle. All right, you really need one. Take Scotty's advice. Buy one used. They have horrendous resale value. I had a customer, brand new Model S Tesla was $126. He bought it used with 15,000 miles for $45, like 1/3 the price of the car. I've had people buy Nissan Leafs, pay 1/4 what the original price was, and maybe they had 50,000 miles on it. They still had a lot of life left in them. Don't buy a new one. You're throwing your money away. They're worth nothing as they age. You might not even like it, but you get a used one that's cheap and it works good. What the heck? If you don't like it, you're not losing that much money. I would never advise anybody to go out and buy themselves a $60,000 to $120,000 electric car. You might not like it. They might fail as a brand, and you're stuck wasting your money, and no one's going to buy it for anything. Their resale value is bad enough now. Imagine if they start to fail. They'll be giving the things away, and nobody will want them. So if you're going to buy one, look around. Get a used one. I had a guy the other day over here in one of those BMW i3s. A beautiful car. It was fun to drive, right? He didn't pay 50-something grand for it. He paid $21,500. Because he bought it used. And he bought it used at the BMW dealer. Because BMW people generally, they want a fast luxury car. And now that's a little subcompact. Like, we don't like that. He found it at a BMW dealer and got it for $21,500. Been sitting there for months because people that go to BMW don't really want that kind of car. So he bought it. And it's a great car. He's having a lot of fun with it. Patrick Zambori says, good morning, Scotty. Here's one that baffles me. I got an '08 Matrix with a 1ZZFE 4-cylinder engine. I found one of the vanes on the inner part of the cam actuator broken clean off. Why did it break? I'm hoping you're not the original owner, because if you're not the original owner, the previous owners just didn't change the oil enough. That wears. The first thing that's going to wear from dirty oil or lack of oil is the cams, because they're on the top of the engine. The oil pump's on the bottom. It's got to pump it up there. Somebody didn't take care of the oil, and it broke off because they didn't take care of it. You didn't say how many miles you have on it. I mean, eventually things will break if it's got 250,000 miles. But if it's just normal mileage, it's generally, they don't maintain them right, then the engine breaks. They're complicated engines, but they're well made. So I tell people, if you don't do anything to your car but one thing, change the oil every 5,000 miles or so, and you'll be happy. It'll last a long time. Toyotas are well made, but anything will break if you don't take care of it, especially if it still runs good. The H2O man says, Scotty, I got an '07 5.7 liter Toyota with 302,000 miles. It runs great, but there's a lot of valve clatter. Anything I can do to quiet it down? Should I just live with it? Well, you got 302,000 miles. Here's the problem with that engine design. It doesn't have hydraulic lifters like an American car. And it's not like a Honda where you just take the valve covers off and you loosen the bolts and then you turn the screws until each valve is adjusted. If you got an 8-cylinder engine like yours, geez, there's a lot of adjusting, right? But Toyotas are a real pain in the wazoo when they finally clatter and they're worn, because their cams sit on top of a stainless steel shim. The shims wear. You got to measure all of them and see what's off. then you got to take the whole up of the engine apart. You have to have it written down. You take out the first shim, and you got to remember how much that was off. Then you would have to measure that shim with a micrometer, then buy another shim that was 0.08 of an inch taller. Not any fun. Call a Toyota dealer, ask them what they're going to charge you to adjust the valves. You're probably crapping your pants. As long as it runs okay, they do go an awful long time. I've never had them adjusted in my 94 Celica, and it's a 4-cylinder. It makes a little noise, but it still runs good with 240,000 miles, so I just live with it. I'm not going to do all that work. That's just an insane amount of work. Ellen Lawson says, my 03 Envoy shows sloppy steering. If it's sloppy, something's wrong. I got a video you can watch. It'll explain it all in depth. Most people like videos, so just go to Fix Your Own Car Suspension Scotty on YouTube. You can watch. You jack the car up. You pull on the wheels at 3 and 9. If it wobbles then, usually it's a tie rod. Pull it at noon and 6. If that wobbles, it's usually a ball joint. If you don't get any wobbling then, put it on the ground. Turn the steering wheel. If the steering wheel's got slop, then somewhere down the line, you probably got either a bad power steering rack itself that's giving that slop and the wheels aren't moving, or the power steering shaft that goes from the steering wheel down. They have little universal joints on them. And if it's a real old car, they get worn, and when you turn them, the joints move, but the wheels don't. And that's a pain in the butt, because basically the steering column's going to need replacing. Nobody really fixes those things anymore. They would just replace them. But normally it's a tie rod, ball joint, or your wheel bearings. If your wheel bearing's bad, then when you wiggle the wheel at any angle, it'll go back and forth because it's the wheel bearing in the middle, and anytime you grab it, it'll wobble all over the place. So check those things first. A Black Master Splendor says, Scotty, my search for a car is finally over. I got my grandmother's 2010 Lexus ES 350. She wanted $1,500 for it. It had 218,000 miles. Runs like a clock. Any thoughts? Yeah, they're great vehicles. If she took care of it, they're excellent cars. They're excellent cars. They're well made. They can last a long time. $1,500 is nothing for one of those things. And 218,000 miles, it still has quite a bit of life in it. You want to check, because of the mileage, the fluids off, and pull the wheels off, see if any of the cylinders have any leaking, or if the brake hoses are cracked, and replace the rubber stuff. They're well-made vehicles. You got a real deal there from Granny. Pure German Blood says, I got an 07 Tundra. The heat's only blowing on the passenger side and just blowing normal air on the driver's side. The way modern cars work is, they're way too complex, but you know, there's the engineers for you. All your stuff is electronic and computer controlled. So what's happening is, you got heat on the passenger side, but on the driver's side, you just got air, but it's not hot. That means that your actuators aren't working to open up the doors to let hot air go through the heater core and then come out on the driver's side. The actuator is working for the passenger side, but not the driver's side. Now, sometimes the blend doors themselves stick. Sometimes the actuators break and they don't open and close them. The problem is, it's in the dash of your car. You got to take the whole dash apart. Access like that is a real pain in the butt job. My advice is, don't just guess. At least start with a guy like me. We've got fancy scan tools, right? We hook them up, and we can do bi-directional testing to say, maybe you'll get lucky and it's the control unit that's bad, that's just in the front of the dash, that's easy to take out. But if it's the actual actuator, somebody that's inside the dash, inside the heater box, that is a pain in the butt to take apart. We can tell with our machines by doing the bi-directional testing. It's worth to be a mechanic, at least to analyze it. But I mean, if you're a real riverboat gambler, I mean, if you can get your head under there with a flashlight and look around, maybe you got lucky and just the actuator door, they have rods, maybe the rod fell out of the hole, and all you got to do is snap it back in place, and then you could put a little clip on it. Sometimes the plastic clips break and they fall out. You might get lucky, but there's not much working room in there. Try and look. Maybe you'll get lucky. James Self says, Scotty, did you know if ZMAX Additive works? A lot of that stuff is snake oil. Now, the ZMAX stuff, I had a run-in with them years ago. They wanted me to do advertising for them, and I said, I don't do advertising. I check out products. You know, I saw when I was in Texas was they'd come to different areas, and once they came to Texas and they were in Galveston, and they spend a fortune advertising. They flood the floodgates with advertising about how great it is. Most of the time, you don't need an additive in a car anyway, unless you got a problem, because gasoline burns pretty good. If you buy regular gasoline from a regular accredited company, the gasoline's pretty good. You really don't need additives in it. I know they have oil additives too, but your oil doesn't really need an additive unless you got a junker that burns a ton of oil and you want to try to make it last a little bit longer. The oil that they make today is so well made. I would not go to some aftermarket company and buy their, miracle oil. If you want a good oil for a modern car, you get that GF6 oil, the new oil that they have out there. I made a video the other day, showed a guy in his Honda. He had oil dilution because it was a 1% 1.5 liter turbo. He switched to the GF0W16 oil, then he had the oil analyzed before, and then after he drove that 5,000 miles with the GF6, and the oil dilution went from like 1.7% to almost nothing. It just said trace elements, so it's much less than 1%. The stuff does work. Buy good oil, don't buy additives. The additives are a waste of money, or sometimes they even harm. If the weight is too heavy and it's a light oil you're putting it in, then the engine won't pump the oil up fast enough, the cams will wear faster. Engineers design these oils to really work well. You use the right oil. You don't need to put any additives in it. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.